Hello, it's BT. Welcome back to the very first official TADTalk episode. At least something that covers one of my writings, something I wrote, one of my arguments from the first chapter. This is the very first one I include, and it is the odds argument. So I want to kind of introduce this as a way, at least in future videos, that I will go through these arguments, the ones I've written, and other things I've written in this book, to kind of put a frame as to how these videos will look, and in general, just the kind of way I want to talk about these things. Um, so yeah, I'll go ahead and read through what I wrote here. So this was an argument I rated a 3 out of 10 because you shouldn't really base your ultimate beliefs on statistics. But at least from a logical standpoint, it makes sense. So, first premise we have here: if there is a God, one properly follows and obeys the religious requirements associated with them, that individual will have a positive outcome in the afterlife, no matter what kind of afterlife or religion it is, or God. If there is a God and one doesn't properly follow or obey the religious requirements, then they'll have a negative outcome. Pretty simple. And then lastly, if there's not a God, then there's no point. We will just cease to exist, become nothing after death, and belief in anything is meaningless. So at least from this, it makes the most sense to actively practice a faith, even if you don't truly want to or know what's right. No matter what, being theistic or polytheistic, whatever, could result in a positive outcome. It gives you more of a chance at whatever is beyond this life. Whereas not being theistic, or at least rejecting religion entirely, or some of the standards of it, will just always result in a negative outcome. So it's like a win-lose or a lose-lose situation. Now, between those, I'd rather take a win-lose than a guaranteed effort wasted because I didn't believe in something. So, yeah, although this makes sense logically, you shouldn't use this argument as a major consideration in what you believe or what philosophies you like. That's kind of why I only have it as a 3 out of 10, because there's aspects of it that kind of do make sense, but realistically, any all knowing God, any God of any religion, would be powerful enough to basically read you and know what you think and know your potential antics for why you would want to basically just believe in something without actually truly believing. That God would know that you just want to make it to heaven and that's it. And at least what I tend to bring a lot of my arguments back to in general is my belief in Catholicism. And I still consider myself Catholic, and I I still practice my faith a lot. I would just say I'm more of a spiritual person now and a lot more open to interpretations about what life is. Um, but at least for this argument here, I argue that this is why certain Catholic sacraments can just be ridiculous, like reconciliation. So if you think about it, going to confession, confessing your sins to a priest, you could basically go in there, admit almost anything, and the priest would believe you, and you could walk out acting like you're a sin-free person. So it almost feels like a little bit cheap to just like basically confess anything or come out of a faith like that just thinking you're like perfect. I think this is something that relates back to indulgences in the time of Luther in his 95 theses, basically protesting against why the church had BS, why you shouldn't be able to just pay your way to heaven. Because if people think you can just pay your way to heaven, then you don't have to actually be a good person. So if you're Catholic, you can interpret it as being able to get away with anything as long as you admit it to a confessional, or being able to get away with everything if you happen to be a priest, because priests, in by Catholic religion standards, are able to forgive sins on behalf of God. So basically, with this argument, practicing a faith, which I think is a very good thing to have, like would never, it honestly would never hurt you. It kind of helps surround you by people who are also in an uncertain state about what could come after this, or am I being a good person? Am I with the right people? It helps bring a sense of community among people who are unsure. So, yeah, if God though knows that you only abide by a religion for its benefits, then you aren't being true to yourself or to God. And you'd still not really make it where you think you're going to make it after, I would think. So going back to different sacraments, it's important to understand like what these traditional worship styles and sacraments actually do for people, like the functional significance of religion itself. Religion brings people together, at least in Catholicism. When you have the Eucharist, you share a meal, you give peace, you're around people that you love and that are in a religion based around the idea of love. So it's at least the way it's supposed to be. It really is meant to help you and actually make you feel like you have a relationship with the Almighty. Like when someone goes to confession seriously and has their sins forgiven, it's legitimately helpful for the person. It's almost like therapy, because with a therapist, you almost tell them what you wouldn't tell anyone else, your sins. With a priest, they'll listen to you like like no one else really does. So when someone who does something really wrong and admits it, that takes guts to do, and having someone honestly hear you out is a super helpful thing, which is why therapy is, again, a very amazing tool, while I'm drawing parallels between it and confession. But yeah, what happens if someone lies in a confession or admits something and isn't actually sorry? What if they just not not want to have a sin on their record? Then it's just a cover up a sin that doesn't actually help someone, and this can be on the person or on the priest. And I feel like priests especially are more likely to be at fault because they're in the position of power. They're able to actually forgive the sins. Um, yeah, so it really can help you be comfortable in discomfort, but if that discomfort ha- revolves around you basically being untrue to what you're doing, then you're just being a covert narcissist. Now, going back to the problem with priests and other church leaders, the ones that you kind of look up to, um, there's a lot of cases I feel like that I've heard about since high school where those people aren't actually true to their communities. I think it can sometimes stem from mental illness in the priests, especially if they're really old, and the fact that they remain celibate. So I feel like that alone can contribute to the the overall stigma that like a lot of priests are like pedophiles or aren't actually like good people. And yeah, when you're in the confession or when you're hearing a mass from someone, you never you never get to question the priest. You never do. You the only time that they face the only time that it really is questioned is when they get found out for doing something awful to someone. And especially if it's done to like a child, which is kind of I feel like almost like the main target audience, like especially with like bringing kids up through baptism and kind of attending like Catholic schools and being in that context. Um, they're it's more like meant for them to kind of mature in and learn, but that makes them a target, especially by these old creepy priests sometimes. And there was also, I think, a case where I haven't been, I haven't seen too much in detail about all the news related to ice in Minnesota, but I believe there was like an ice rally or something that a priest was like trying to lead, or at least like be a major part of. Like they wanted to emphasize that they were a priest, but they also were in ice. And if like that in and of itself is someone who is fake to their religion, because anyone who would support killing of random people when it's not really justified, um, it's terrible. And I think in this case, there's a lot of radical people out there who basically they identify with a faith, um, and loving figures that try to justify their actions that aren't loving at all. Going back to covert narcissism, it's honestly up to how you view your own behavior and if you choose to hide it. And the ultimate kind of hit home idea with this is that the God of any religion on earth is powerful enough to know your true self. So if you choose to do evil or embrace an evil ideology while still, quote unquote, holding true to your faith, you'd only hide it for so long before you're faced with judgment of some kind, either in this life or whatever comes after this. So always remember to be true to yourself and, yeah, embrace religion in a true way. And if you don't like religion, then it's fine. Because being agnostic is almost basically shit. Now, kind of considering this argument with Gnosticism, or considering this argument with agnosticism, like, I think a god would be okay with the fact as long as you're open to believing. Because, you know, what is true about this life and everything is that God really gives no direct proof. It's never easy to make that leap of faith. So I would think God understands that. So basically, don't get too caught up in the statistics behind what the statistics and rules about what could make you go to heaven or hell or anything else, because ultimately being true to yourself and being a good person is one way you can't go wrong in God's eyes, and practicing basic morals. I'm going to leave it at that. um some updates. So it is probably like a -8 wind chill, and I just got done shoveling a shit ton of snow. So if this video comes out all over the place, so be it. I needed to get it out anyways because I just want to get this series going. I'm gonna try to upload one video a week, I think. At least one every 2 weeks. Because this is, I feel like only the tip of the iceberg with what I've written about. And like I mentioned, this was the very first philosophical argument I've ever learned about back in high school. And it just always stood out to me, just thinking, like, just by odds alone of my 50/50s of what can happen, it makes sense to, put your heart towards God. But a lot of my arguments really start to digest that idea. So, and especially in relation to the real world and the fucking crazy shit that's going on here. By the way, too, I don't know if I mentioned this, but my book currently is about 100 pages long, and there's 11 arguments total. So that'll kind of give a timeline, I feel like, for what the next videos will look like. All right, it's time to get back to my house in the comfort of warmth. But I appreciate you hearing my thoughts today, and cheers to more days of negative temperatures. Peace.